Welcome to the Divershefy Inspiring Leaders Podcast. Our guest today is Heather Paterson. She has 25 years in a career in sales, marketing, and general management in 4 countries and led businesses in medtech for over 15 years. Heather grew up in Canada, and after earning an MBA, she began her career with Johnson & Johnson and relocated to Australia, where she still lives in Sydney. With a particular interest in accelerating talent development, Heather founded Progression Lab, a leadership development firm. And I'm really interested to hear more about that from Heather. Welcome, Heather, today.
Hi, thank you.
So tell us a little bit more about your background and what do you do now? What is it with Progression Lab that you're trying to achieve?
Well, it's been an interesting route. I've gone on a few different roads in my career, but as you mentioned, I had a very corporate beginning. I worked for a couple of different large multinationals in my native Canada, as you mentioned, and then moved with them to Australia, where I've lived for the better part of 20 years now. And I really enjoyed that. I was a commercial leader, leading sales and marketing and leading different med tech firms, and loved that. But the best part of any job I ever had was always the people and developing talent and helping people get promoted. And I really, really enjoyed that part of my work. So when I decided to leave corporate about not quite 3 years ago, I decided that that would be where I would spend all of my time. And that was why I set up Progression Lab. So again, the idea behind that name is that it's not about perfection. It's about just getting better and trying new things and getting better all the time. And that's really a real passion of mine, to just sort of try new things and get better. And I began Progression Lab with a lot of what I call the core skills. Some people call them soft skills, but I call them core skills around things like having difficult conversations and getting better outcomes from those conversations. I think I began there because I always say there's 3 things you need to be successful. You need results, relationships, and reputation. And you can't have any of those things if you can't have a difficult conversation and get a good outcome from it. It's a lot more than just getting up the courage to have the tough talk. You actually have to get a good outcome at the end. And what I really sort of marveled at was these are skills that everyone needs that almost no one learns how to do. We're just kind of left to our own devices with this. So I thought, well, I'll bring everything that I've learned in my career to try and help people skip a few steps and skip a few of the mistakes that I've certainly made. So that was where it all began. But one of the things that I noticed as I progressed through was the value of community. I found that women were probably my biggest client base, and women were really interested in how to progress in their careers. And I just found that the community that we can build together is so valuable for so many different reasons. So I started writing a Substack, and I challenged myself. I can't even remember why I challenged myself to this. I wanted to see how it would go with some real consistency and what it could become and what I would learn from it. So I committed to writing and publishing every day for a year. And I've extended that now to 500 days. So I'm nearing the end of writing and publishing every day for just about 500 days now. And I'm not quite sure how I'm going to progress with it. But that's been a fascinating...
Congratulations. That's quite an achievement.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been a huge challenge, and I have learned so much from that particular part of the journey, but it's led me in some really interesting directions.
So tell us a little bit more. I think maybe it led you also. I remember we talked about menopause. We had a fireside chat about silent exodus and why women leave, and that has really a lot to do with also the menopause. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes. So while I was doing a little bit of research for my writing one day, I came across this information that really changed the way that I felt about menopause. I was going through perimenopause myself at the time, and still am. And I discovered that menopause is actually really rare in animals. And I don't know if you knew that, but I was really surprised by this. I couldn't figure out what in the world. I thought it was just aging. I thought we were just getting older and just kind of in a bit of a decline, because that's really the narrative that we've all heard, isn't it? That we're all just sort of fighting against nature, trying to be vibrant and vital in our 50s and beyond. And I wasn't terribly keen on that narrative. So I was really, really interested in this information. And I started looking into it, and it turns out that, evolutionary biologists were really puzzled by it. They didn't really understand why, from an evolutionary perspective, why would any animal stop reproducing and then stay alive for decades afterwards? And so I did a huge amount of research into this and discovered that there are only about 8 animals in the world that go through menopause, and only 8. That's it.
Interesting.
And there are some fascinating things they have in common. But when you look at all of the mammals, what I discovered was that all of the mammals are big brained animals, highly intelligent, and they live in tightly knit, multi-generational family groups for their whole lives. And that what they do is they are engaging in what evolutionary biologists call intergenerational transfers, where they are passing knowledge and experience and wisdom to the youngest generation. And what we find is that in animals that go through menopause, what evolution has figured out is that older females, older women, are so valuable that they actually keep them alive for decades after their reproduction, because we provide such a valuable amount of experience and wisdom and leadership. And what I found was that in every single animal, all 8 animals, every single one, no exceptions, even the little insect, there's one insect that's sort of a bit of an anomaly, even she, every single animal in her postmenopausal years, the females are engaged in the work of leadership. And this just blew my mind, because this is the complete opposite story that we're told, isn't it? I mean, just the total opposite narrative, away from, no, you're in aging and you're in decline and all this. And then you look at the science behind every single animal that goes through menopause, and you discover menopause is actually an evolutionary strategy to enable female leadership. And so this detonated my brain. And I had this sort of overwhelming feeling of, I knew it. Like, I knew there was something more to this. I knew there was something it couldn't be true that we were in decline, because I was feeling so energized, and so many women I knew were feeling energized about the second half of their lives. And this, to me, was finally the explanation of what we're really meant to do. And so that has just changed my life. It's really changed the way I feel about myself, the way I feel about my future. And I want to share it with every single woman that I come across.
I also remember that that there's a rewiring of the brain is happening, right?
Yes. And so it's interesting, because when I discovered that the point of menopause is to enable us for leadership, I thought, what's going on here? Because I don't know about you, but I, like about 2/3 of women who go through perimenopause, I had massive brain fog, and I couldn't think and retrieve words. And I thought, before I knew that it was perimenopause, I actually thought I had early onset dementia. Like, I was really quite scared about it. It was really quite frightening. Now we can laugh about it because we know what it is. But essentially what's going on is your brain is undergoing a renovation. And so it's not a decline. Again, it feels like a demolition project, but it's actually a renovation. And so what's happening in our brains is we are getting rid of all sorts of things that we don't need anymore, where we're moving out of this incredibly intense time of caring for others. And this is true whether you have children or not. Women all go through this, of this huge amounts of estrogen, this nurturing hormone, where we're constantly taking care of other people and being yanked around by everybody else's needs. That is moving into the background. And suddenly we have this incredible feeling of independence, but also this incredible feeling of, pretty happy for you to start looking after yourself. And I am not that interested in what other people think anymore. And I am moving into this new era of independence and influence and impact of my own. And so that's one thing. But we also go through this renovation where we're getting rid of things we don't need. Like, for example, one of the scientists who studies this, Lisa Mosconi, was describing it as getting rid of instruction manuals that you don't need. So things like driving a car or folding laundry or making coffee, all these things that you kind of automatically know how to do. Your brain's like, okay, I don't need that anymore. I'm going to free up the room. I'm going to prune back so that we can sort of move forward with all of this new stuff. And some of the things that we develop in menopause is, number one, is an increased emotional resilience. So particularly to negative stimuli. So those older women that you see who are just unflappable? Those older women where that's what it is. That's what it is, where we're getting to that point where we're just unflappable, and things that maybe would worry us before don't worry us anymore. What other people think doesn't worry us anymore. We're moving through and we get all these incredible upgrades, more empathy, better reasoning, better planning, all these things that prepare us for this 3 decades of leadership that evolution is preparing us for. So it feels like a demolition project when you're going through it, but it all kind of moves through, and there's a whole lot of upgrades in there.
Well, I mean, I wished I knew that before. And I think this is where we need to do a lot more work and actually inform and talk about it and bring women at least in their 40s to understand, what's about to happen and what it means and that you go through it. I also had the brain fog for like a couple of years. Definitely. I was also thinking I'm not able to remember names or other things, right? And you feel like, what's going on? But I think if we know about it, we can have a much more positive relationship to it and actually really transition into this leadership, actively transition into the leadership, which I think is often missed because we just take other people's word for we are declining and we are on the way out, right? But I'm working with so many women with Divershefy who are in their 50s, who are looking for a second career in board roles, for example, right? Or fractional CXOs. These are absolute leadership roles, and they are so ready to give because there's so much experience they have. Their kids are out of the way, they are free to actually do what they have been preparing for in a certain way for decades, right? And now I think we need to get other people to understand also that these women are available and can provide a fantastic service.
Yeah, I you're taking the thoughts right out of my brain, Sylvia, because one of the things because I'm writing a book on this topic, and where I've ended up going with this book is that older women are uniquely suited for this moment. Because as we move out of this knowledge economy where you can find out any information that you want at the click of a button, very simple, we're moving into this new era of leadership where we need people who can lead human beings, who can behave with empathy, and who can build community and connections and bring people together and inspire. And when you look at, the qualities of women, full stop, but what we get when we go through menopause is all of that, is everything that we're already good at. We get more of it. We get more empathy, more emotional resilience, all of these things that create this leadership profile, which is just absolutely unbeatable. If you look at, I agree with you 100%. Women in their 50s and beyond, it's not just 50s. Women in their 50s and 60s and beyond, these are the people that we want running this joint. These are absolutely the people with the moral compass, and not to say that men don't have this, but you get where I'm going with this, that it's not just that, and it's a nice thing to do to keep women in the workforce. It's because you need them. You absolutely need them. We all do. And we can learn from these women, and they're also the most collaborative demographic and the least competitive demographic. So if you want to bring people into your organization, we're going to bring people together who are going to share their knowledge and their wisdom. It's older women. Older women are an absolute slam dunk. So I agree with you completely. And this is some of what I'm writing about, which is that companies, and what I'm helping companies do, is understand how they can help women feel more confident by knowing all of this information, but also how they can help them to develop and keep this critical talent pool, because losing women at this stage of their careers is disastrous for companies.
So that's why we had this fireside chat called Silent Exodus, right? Because so many women are misunderstood or specifically when they go through hot flashes and incredibly physical changes, that they don't want to take, you know, they don't want to please people anymore. So then companies are like, oh, she's suddenly becoming so difficult. But this is where exactly where the companies need to understand, and the leaders in the company need to understand what's actually happening and what kind of
Yes.
talent is coming to be with them for another decade or two. And this is where I feel we need to do a lot more publicity, or I don't know, just get people to understand what's actually happening. Do you have any suggestions how we can do that? How can we promote this other than this podcast, obviously? But
Yeah.
how can we get
Well,
more people to understand how critical that is?
yeah, I think so. This is actually the pivot that I've made recently, away from, not away from the other work that I've done. I still do that, but what I'm really excited about is this exact thing where helping women to understand that menopause is not a decline, helping, and not just women, helping everyone. So everyone in an organization really needs to understand this. Menopause is not a decline. It's not aging. It is a transition, and it can be very challenging. It can be, I mean, it's a big, big shift. And it can probably 80% of women have symptoms. Some about 20% of women have very, very challenging physical symptoms of menopause and mental symptoms as well. And so it's a very important shift that women are making. But it's critically important for companies to understand that it is not a decline. It's a challenge for a while, but the benefits on the other side of this are that you are going to get even better leaders than you had before, and they are going to be the most prepared, like you say. And there's this huge amount of motivation too that I see with so many women who are just like, I am so ready for this next step. I am so ready for this next period of my life. Once they go through this real sort of challenge for many people with perimenopause, but companies need to know this. So what I'm doing is I've created a talk around exactly what happens to us, why we go through menopause and what happens to us, and why that is a huge benefit for women. Like, I have a wildly positive idea around aging and getting older and how women get better as they go through this. And so that can be a huge education for organizations. And many men have been like, whoa, this is the complete opposite that I've heard. And education is the first step. So I agree with you 100%. Everybody needs to know this. But then the following piece that I've been doing with companies is beginning what I'm calling community conversations, because what women have been feeding back is that they want to be able to talk about this, and they want to have some community around them, and they want to feel less stigmatized and less alone, and they want to feel heard. And so we begin these conversations talking about the impact and really understanding what is the impact that this is having on you and you personally and on your work. And then moving into a new conversation about, so what can your company do? What can you and your community and your company do to make this an easier transition for you and to help you as you go through this transition into this new era of your life? And a lot of the fixes are not expensive at all. I mean, so much of it has to do with just being heard and having some flexible work arrangements and being understood. You know, that those can be really, really big parts of it. And I really believe that menopause is the next mental health. You know, 10 years ago, no one was talking about mental health. Now it is on every corporate agenda. It's in every budget, and everyone is talking about it, and everyone knows that it's a responsibility of managers to be able to support their people. I really believe that menopause is next. And this is the first step, is educating people, number one, to understand this is not a decline. This is a transition, and we need to help people through it.
Absolutely. And I hope we get and hope you get to train a lot of people on this topic. Literally, like the posh training, it needs to be a training on this as well. And I actually think I think each individual, each woman knowing about this, knowing what's happening, can also be very honest in actually what's happening. Because, for example, I was sitting in a lot of meetings in the last 8 years, right? And then hot flash happens, right? and you get all red and hot and everything. And I asked to turn on the AC and stuff. And everyone says, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, it's just a hot flash." But to be just straightforward, honest, this is what's happening, guys. you know,
Yeah. And
I think
yeah,
will help in the long run that for men to actually understand that this is just part of the human female experience, right? It's nothing dramatic.
yeah.
I mean, it's not something that anybody is to fear. It's just something that we have to be willing to actually express and just be honest about. I mean, obviously, you won't tell everything, but you want to tell some, you can say, okay, it's a hot flash, don't worry. It's just,
If people understood that menopause is, I mean, to me, when I now know what this is actually doing for me, and I'm moving into this new incredible era of leadership and independence and impact, well, I'm not ashamed of it. I'm proud of it. I'm excited
yes,
about it. And I want
yes,
every woman to feel like that. And I want every workplace to embrace that. And I want to burn the stigma to the ground so that when you're having a hot flash in a meeting, you're not embarrassed about it.
exactly.
It breaks my heart that women have to go through this, that we have to be embarrassed about these symptoms when it's like life is preparing me for something massive because I am so important to the survival of my species that I am being preserved for 30 years beyond my reproductive time. This is incredibly rare. There's literally 8 animals on Earth that do this. And the only time that we see it is when women are in these incredibly important leadership roles. So it should be revered. And I know
Yes.
we're probably a ways from that, but I am absolutely dedicated to this. It's really become my mission. And I am so wildly optimistic about the second half of my life that I want to share it with absolutely everyone.
So let's make it happen. I think we can go out there and promote this to any lengths. I'm with you. I want to help you with that. And
Yeah.
with Divershefy, I hope we do similar work and get you support in that direction. And together we're going to promote this and
Yeah.
really get people to understand how menopause is actually an upgrade for us to transition into next level leadership.
Yeah. It's really exciting. And I think you're doing such important work by creating community among women of this age group. And we really underestimate our power. So I would love to hear from any of your members and understand what they're curious about and really build more community around this message and around helping women just feel totally unstoppable.
Thank you so much, Heather. It was a pleasure talking with you on the Divershefy Inspiring Leaders podcast today. Please check out Heather's LinkedIn profile, connect with her. She's open to receiving many requests from you. And we look forward to seeing you again.
Thanks, Sylvia.
Thank you. Take care.